Okay, I think it is now, I have just after 1 o'clock, so we're going to get started. I would like to welcome everyone to the 108th annual meeting of the Saskatchewan Hockey Association. It's my pleasure to chair this, my last meeting for you, and we will we will begin with introductions. And as I think most of you know me, I'm Marianne Vroba. I'm from Latman, and we have officers and zone directors. So on the officers group, we have Tim Ubik, and last night we had an election, and Tim will be taking over the role of chairperson for the SHA. The other officers include Len Thomas of Saskatoon, Sterling Switzer of Regina, Edward Watson of Easton, Warren Devinson of Clavette, and our two new officers that were elected in February will be Trevor Norm from Tisdale and Chad Hollanati from Springside. For Zone 1, we have two directors, Kyle Hoyam from Mydale and Ryan Henney from Weyburn. Zone 2 is well represented by Sarah Hodge from Regina and Keith Janot. Zone 3 is represented by Greg Holbrook and Courtney from Hodgeville and Courtney LaSalle from Moose Jaw. Zone 4 was last year represented by Chad Hollanati, but of course he's become an officer. And we have Daryl Hallowich from Melville. So there is a vacancy in Zone 4 for director. In Zone 5, we have Kent Armbruster from Wadena, and we did have for a short time another officer, but it's been vacant for the last half of the year and remains vacant. So we do have a vacancy in Zone 5 as well. Zone 6, Saskatoon, is Aaron Dimitarko and Kevin Karochuk. I tried to practice that, Kevin. I apologize if I didn't get it right. Zone 7 is Jean Gilchrist and Joan Larry from Cutknife and Joan Larry from St. Walburg. Zone 8, Holly Pettit, Buffalo Narrows, and Rod Pallon from Tisdale. Trevor Norm was a referee-in-chief, and now he's become an officer, and we did not fill the referee-in-chief position. Bill Chow is also now part of the board, although he's a non-voting member. Bill is the president of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, and he comes from Prince Albert. For staff on the board, we have Kelly McClintock, our general manager, Derek Dureau, the senior manager of operations, Joseph LePerriere, manager of marketing and communications, and Jake Murray, the coordinator of marketing and communications. So I'd like to turn it over to Joseph, and maybe you can give a lowdown of how we're going to use this today, Joseph.
Okay. Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. Just a few things we'll go over before we get going here. If you scroll over your screen, you'll see a taskbar, and that taskbar you can get to the chat window or see the participants. We'll use the chat window for voting, which will be explained a bit later on, I'm assuming, or do we want to go
do it now?
We'll do that now. So in the voting, when Marianne calls for a vote on a notice motions, we will count abstainments and no's. By default, you will be a yes for the vote. So at the time she calls for the vote in the chat box, which will only come to my computer here, we ask that you say no, that you're not in favor, or abstain, you're removing yourself from the vote. Those will be the two answers that you can put input there. Other than that, your mute unmute is at the bottom left of your taskbar. Well, in the top right, there's a speaker and a gallery view you can switch between. The speaker view allows you to see who's talking at the time. Gallery view lets you see everyone on the line at the same time. I think that's all I have for now. If you have any questions at any time, please use the chat box. Feel free. That'll come to me. Stop, and we can let Marianne or whoever is speaking at the time answer your question in a timely manner.
Thank you, Joseph. We also have from Hockey Canada, Tom Rennie and Scott Smith, but I'm going to introduce them in a few minutes. So right now, I'd like to call on Len Thomas, and Len is going to read the honor roll of the deceased members from Saskatchewan Hockey. Len?
Thank you, Marianne. So if everyone could just remain seated, typically at our AGM, we have people stand during this, but just remain seated. And after I complete the list, we'll just all please pause together for a moment of silence, and then we'll have the chair continue. So the following are the participants of our branch who have passed away this season. Leslie Gogol. Born in Tisdale, spent most of his 75 years in Saskatoon. Les passed away suddenly on June 13th, 2019. Les spent over 30 years dedicating his spare time to the Saskatoon Contacts U18 AAA hockey team. The rink was his happy place. Cole Stang from Macklin, Saskatchewan was a U18 player who wore number 5 on his jersey. Cole died on July 13th, 2019 in a car accident. Don Stratillo grew up in Shaunavon, Saskatchewan, where he played his minor hockey. As an adult, Don moved to Regina and was an official in the city and the leagues around the province. Don passed away November 19th, 2019 at the age of 78. Ron Arashan Gough. Born in Grand Forks, BC, Ron was a former professional hockey player, drafted in the second round by the Buffalo Sabres and played in the NHL with the Edmonton Oilers. After his NHL career, Ron moved to the north and coached the senior team in Whitehorse, where they won the Allen Cup in 1993. He moved to Estevan, Saskatchewan, and was an outstanding volunteer, assisting with fundraising for many hockey projects. Ron died at 62 years old on December 15th, 2019, after a short illness. Adeline Thomas, 93 years old, passed away in her hometown of Gravelbourg on January 10th, 2020. Adeline was a hockey mom, hockey grandma, and hockey great-grandma with 20 hockey players, 19 boys, and 1 girl in the end, and a board member. Well into her 80s, Adeline was able to outwalk most of those she raised. Chad Himmelsbeck, 45 years old, from Carlisle, Saskatchewan. Chad was a player, coach, and supporter of many hockey programs in his community. Chad passed away unexpectedly February 15th, 2020. Larry Fleck from Lampman, Saskatchewan. Larry was in his 70s and was a long-standing player, coach, and builder. Larry's number 10 jersey hangs in the Lampman rink. Retired by the senior team, Larry succumbed to an illness on February 29th, 2020. Chad Holbrook. Chad was 48 years old and from the Swift Current area when he passed away suddenly on February 6th, 2020. Chad was a 4th-generation farmer and an avid volunteer, including coaching, managing, and mentoring in the hockey community. Colby Cave from Battleford, Saskatchewan. Colby played junior hockey in Saskatchewan, and after a few seasons in the American Hockey League, Colby became a professional hockey player who played for the Boston Bruins and Edmonton Oilers. During his brief career, Colby made an enormous impression on his teammates. On April 11th, 2020, the hockey community was saddened to hear that at the age of 25 years of age, Colby passed away as a result of a rare condition causing a fatal brain bleed. Braden Bull was 32 years old, from Little Pine First Nations in the Battlefords. Braden was in his first season as an official and previously played for FSNIN events and senior teams. Braden also played junior hockey for Onion Lake. Braden Bull passed away on January 22nd, 2020. Lester Nicotine, 48 years old, from Red Pheasant Cree Nation near Battleford. Lester was an official from 2009 to 2014 in the Battlefords areas. Lester passed away on April 2nd, 2020. Hilton Hughes, born in Cupar, Saskatchewan and moved to Lockwood, Hilton passed away at the age of 93 on April 24th, 2020. Hilton was a builder of amateur sport and involved in all sports in his community. Hilton served as an official for the Saskatchewan Hockey, a past executive member of the SHA Referees Division, and was recognized as an SHA official life member. Ethan Grabarczyk was 17 years old when he unexpectedly passed away on June 7th, 2020. Ethan played 8 years of minor hockey with Hockey Regina. Ethan had a profound love of all sports, including hockey, basketball, and especially football. Jasmine Osman passed away at the age of 41 years old on June 14th, 2020. A very proud and dedicated hockey mom with 4 kids, Jasmine was a passionate member of the Weyburn community and was heavily involved in all things related to all kids. While the list is long, there are probably some we have missed. Please hold for a moment of silence to honor those we have listed and others who were not listed but are in our hearts.
Thank you, Len, for reading this. I would now, I'm going to, as the priority of the chair, I'm going to present some acknowledgements right now. So we do have a long service award we wish to present at this moment. Kelly McClintock was hired in September of 94 in the position he continues to hold and has given 25 years and some months to hockey in Saskatchewan. Kelly is a product of Regina and played his minor hockey in the Queen City. He worked for SaskTel, then went to the States to university, and he came back, spent a while with soccer, and then came to Sask Hockey Association. Kelly is dedicated to the game and works to make it accessible to all kids in this province. He is called to sit on several communities and work groups of Hockey Canada, where he is well respected throughout the country. When Kelly first was hired into the association, he had very long hair, and I'm not sure if he had an earring or not, but I do know that he had a certain look to him. I recall Al Hubbs told Kelly once that, you know, ties can be optional, but haircuts not so much. Anyway, we know Kelly and have known him for a long time. Kelly, the board and the staff want to thank you for all your work and dedication to the game, and please accept this gift. Derek has something for you that he can hand over to you. We got something for your office and wanted to get you a travel voucher so you could really, you know, spend it on yourself, but that didn't seem right. So we just have something in an envelope there for you. So congratulations, Kelly. Please join me. Can we give a big, I don't know, how do you give a Zoom clap? You see everybody clapping? Congratulations, Kelly.
Thank you
I'm
very
now
much.
going to ask, yeah, well deserved. I'm going to pass it to Sterling for a moment, and he can talk about the awards that we presented this year.
Welcome, everybody. As chair of the awards committee for this year, we have chosen 3 awards this year. We didn't receive any nominations for Volunteer of the Year for the South. Volunteer of the Year for the North. I want to congratulate Sarah McNaught of Saskatoon. There's a write-up on the internet on our website, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. And not so much for what her special work was last season, but more for a body of work over the last 15 to 20 years. She's been involved with everything from the Esso Cup in Saskatoon in 2003, many other championships in Saskatoon, to the 2018 Four Nations Cup in Saskatoon. She was a recipient of the Saskatchewan Minor Hockey Association Volunteer of the Year. Congratulations, Sarah. Outstanding Coach of the Year award goes to Steve Young of Prince Albert. He coached the Prince Albert Laner Electric female U18 AA Foxes this year. They finished 3rd in the regular season, and before the unfortunate close of the hockey season, they were set to be in the finals, provincial playdowns. One thing I wanted to note is that from the nomination, you get a real sense that Steve believes in the team first attitude and displayed that to his parents. And he made a point of involving all the coaches on his staff, even though he has coached at the major junior level, so he has a lot of knowledge. Our Outstanding Minor Hockey Association of the Year goes to Avonlea Minor Hockey this year. Congratulations. Even though they're under a population of under 400 people, they were able to ice 4 teams this year. They are full supporters of the cross ice and half ice initiatives for novice and initiation. And we're hosting for a SAS First Camp this year, which I understand they were very good hosts for, very accommodating. thank you very much. Congratulations, Evan Lee. Some of our awards are going to change coming up and may be more involved in the Saskatchewan Hockey Hall of Fame in the future. I look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sterling. There's just another person I'd like to acknowledge. Who'd like to take a moment to recognize an exceptional young lady by the name of Brooklyn Holbrook. Brooklyn hails from Hodgeville, Saskatchewan, and played for the University of Saskatchewan Huskies. And in February this year, she was the recipient of the Canada West Student Athlete Community Service Award. Now, what led Brooklyn to this achievement was her work coaching a young team funded by the Kingsman Club of Saskatoon. And actually, because of this, it allowed families to enjoy the game who otherwise might never been able to. Brooklyn is also a member in the Big Sister, Little Sister program and made monthly visits to different elementary schools as a Husky hometown mentor. Brooklyn also didn't forget where her rural roots were and provided on-ice assistance to many female hockey players in rural communities throughout Saskatchewan. Her head coach, Stephen Cook, commented that Brooklyn was the leader on the team and a leader among all of the athletes with the Husky Athletics. Brooklyn believes very strongly in giving back to the game and helping young players. Her leadership skills are evident in the many times she's been named as captain on the team she played for. At university, Brooklyn studied agriculture and bioresources. We can look for great things to come. The world is a better place with Brooklyn in it. Brooklyn also, her dad is Greg, who is our Zone 3 director. So Greg, please extend our congratulations to Brooklyn. Okay, now it's time for our presentation from Hockey Canada. And I'm going to just let you know a little bit about these two guys who I'm going to turn the mic over to. Scott Smith has worked for Hockey Canada, and you too have 25 years in this year, Scott. You started in Atlantic, Canada, and he was quickly promoted up the ranks, and his present day position is the President and Chief Operating Officer of Hockey Canada. Scott has a big job making sure that on a daily basis from coast to coast to coast, the operations of hockey are functioning efficiently and effectively, and he's really good at his job. What I have learned is all the stuff that I took for granted, like a great World Juniors, and I've gone to a few, and I know some of you have gone to a few, but all that stuff is because of the work Scott does behind the scenes. He's able to work well and partner with high-level sponsors, national media, international Ice Hockey Federation, US and European hockey groups, and others. So Scott can do all this and more, and he always has our back. And you know that Scott will be working for the best for Canada. I also know Scott can be a little bit humble about this, and I've actually seen a video of Scott cleaning a local rink. Yes, folks, he can drive the Zamboni too. Yes, and Tom Rennie is also going to speak with us. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Hockey Canada. And Tom came to Hockey Canada with an outstanding reputation as a coach. He began his coaching career in the Western Hockey League, winning a Memorial Cup with the Kamloops Blazers. He went on to coach in the NHL with the Detroit Red Wings, Vancouver Canucks, New York Rangers, and the Edmonton Oilers. Hockey Canada also has made use of his skills as a coach, and as he joined Team Canada for several occasions. In total, Tom has coached in a variety of capacities in 10 world championships, capturing 3 gold, 3 silver, and 2 bronze medals for Canada. Tom's talks are on the Hockey Canada website and are well worth viewing. They're relevant, they're interesting, and guess what? They're not that long to watch either. So I encourage you all to view them. The first time I heard Tom speak at a Hockey Canada meeting, he said that the greatest gift Canada has given to the world is its initiation program. Tom understands, like the philosopher Plato expressed, the beginning is the most important part of the work. Tom is able to inspire and always gives approval for me to quote him. And in fact, this week, I used one of his quotes on my daughter. I said, you know, sometimes you're the dog and sometimes you're the hydrant. So at this moment in time, both Tom and Scott are the exact right people we have leading the path to return to hockey in Canada. True leadership will always be valued, and we are very honored to have you join our meeting. So please welcome Tom Rennie and Scott Smith. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marianne. Very much appreciated. And I could not have expressed Scott's skill set and commitment to hockey and Hockey Canada any better than you did. And believe me, I can speak from firsthand experience. This young fellow props me up on a daily basis, to say the least. And he is every bit as humble as you have suggested, to say the least. And so it's a real pleasure to work with Scott. We do have a couple of acknowledgements to make today, Scott and I both. I will acknowledge Kelly and just congratulate you, Kelly, on 25 years. I think I was around in one of my former stints with Hockey Canada with you, and Marianne, I can vouch for the transition, shall we say, in hairline, and also the color of that mustache. And I think Kelly could probably reciprocate and say, Tom, your hair was brown the last time I saw you. So things happen. But Kelly, congratulations. And certainly enjoy working with you on a daily basis. Enjoyed our trips together through Saskatchewan and the meetings that we've attended together, and certainly look forward to more. With that being said, what I'd like to do is just walk you through a little bit of what basically these last 13, 14 months have really been all about, from I guess, a high level perspective. And Scott, as always, will provide incredible detail to give you even more of a visceral feeling to what has happened here. On March the 6th, our world certainly started to change, to say the least, not just from a hockey perspective, from a social perspective as well, and in any environment, that was fortified through sport, I think has been able to harbor a certain character to get through it, and certainly hockey's no exception. And quite honestly, I think in lots of ways we've led the way. But on March the 6th, we canceled the Women's World Championship, scheduled for Truro and Halifax, which was a tough decision to make, but certainly the right decision, as we paid close attention and have since to the Provincial Health Authority in Nova Scotia, who along with the IIHF instructed us that the best thing to do would be to cancel that championship, which we did. And I think in so doing, certainly protected a lot of people from this ghost of a virus that has hurt many people, to say the least, never mind taking lives. On March the 12th, our hockey world was turned topsy-turvy when we canceled the hockey season. And those of you on the call need to know that Marianne and Kelly, in their respective positions as volunteer leader and staff leader, were in lockstep with everything that we had suggested we do, and certainly contributed in their own way to the outcome of that very, very vital decision. And again, the most important and correct decision we could have possibly made. I bring that to your attention only to recognize one thing, and on the heels of what happened in a tragedy 2 years ago with Humboldt, we had some tremendous learnings as Hockey Canada. I think we responded quickly thanks to the leadership of Marianne and Kelly again, but there were too few involved with that response, if you will. And what we were able to take away from the Humboldt tragedy was an ability to be organized, an ability to be prepared, an ability to have a number of people in place to help with the process of overcoming, that situation that sometimes you just don't plan for but need to be ready for. And we were. And I say that because we were able to have in place, again, subsequent to Humboldt, a crisis management team that involved 14 or 15 of us, I think, outside of a core group of 5 or 6 to kind of get things going, but give everyone a responsibility moving forward with how to, in fact, do just that, move forward. And with that, a tremendous amount of communication, reaction that required instant planning, processes, and a commitment to getting the job done for a number of consecutive days with very, very little sleep in order to make sure we could push out messaging and put ourselves in a position to collectively across the country recognize a commitment to delivering the right message at the right time in the right way. And to each and every one of you, I think it's most important to recognize that you were a part of that. And those of you too that have been recognized with new positions, as alluded to earlier from Marianne, recognizing your board of the day, recognizing new board members, recognizing people coming in for the first time. You should be very proud of what you belong to at Saskatchewan Hockey. It's an association that's driven by a passion for the game and a love for it, of course, but most important of all, the ability to keep safety in the forefront for all of our participants, from 6 to 66 for that matter. And I think that was symbolic on those first couple of weeks with with respect to how we really, I guess, solidified our approach to how to go about this. And from that, we were able to identify in phases how to move forward. And through Kelly and his executive director colleagues across the country, through Mary Ann and her the presidents of our member branches across the country, we were able to meet a number of times and devise a plan of attack moving forward. And within that plan of attack and in phases, we were able to identify what we thought would be most important coming out of the gate, and that was a couple of task teams, one being a task team designed to deal with the health and safety and risk of the player as we return to hockey. And the other ones was sort of a regulatory review of what is in place and what might need to be flexed, enhanced, and promoted moving forward in this first initial stage of a return to hockey. And Glenn McCurdy and Sean Kelly from Hockey Canada led the way from a staff perspective, but a number of people jumped on these task teams to be helpful as well. And without that start on June the 2nd, 4th, I think it was, we would not have been able to push out the guidelines to a return to hockey that have subsequently been embraced by all the member branches and, as required, tweaked and revised to help deal with what is most important in your area, recognizing that they serve as a template, recognizing that they needed to be in place so as to pay most attention to the relevant health authority, in this case, the provincial health authority, but also to the local level of what needed to be in place to keep our athletes and participants safe, but also to do so in a manner that would recognize a certain regulatory platform, if you will, to move forward in a way that allowed us to pay attention to things like what the configuration might look like on the ice, what dressing rooms might look like, what we had to look like on the ice in terms of configuration of athletes plus coaches, what we needed to have in place with respect to safety measures with hand washing, the types of equipment that we had to wear, those types of things were all most important. And because we recognized there would be a staggered approach, the one thing we knew we had to pay attention to was sort of the regulations by which we could participate and the safety measures that needed to be in place no matter when ultimately we started. And that has proved to be of real benefit to us. Along with that, we've been able to recognize that I guess to a point at least, there was unanimity across the country in terms of how we would do this, but also recognize that out of 13 member branches, no one was going to start at the same time, and not even in your own province would you start at the same time. So this served as a platform, if you will, to come back to hockey, and in a way that showed a semblance of organization and structure. This was very much a part of our plan, and as I've said in a couple of other talks that we've done to member branches, the plan is the key, and it's no different than a coach's game plan, for example. It's no different for you and your minor hockey associations to sort of give yourself up to the plan or give yourself up to coaching, so that you can have that collective commitment to it. And you're only as strong as your plan. And what I can tell you across the country, recognizing that there are all kinds of intangibles that present themselves to that could throw a curve, the plan has stood strong. And that is how we need to approach things moving forward. There'll be all kinds of influences from corporate Canada, no question about that, from other volunteer groups across the country. There's no question about that. To get going, we need to get going, and there's no question that's true. But what's most important is this is not a race to be first to anything. It's not even a race, quite honestly. It's just a real important guideline to recognize that the plan means everything, and what is important is to be right and to do things properly. We all need to understand the value of risk management, and the last thing we need is doing things inappropriately because we want to be first, quite honestly. I would tell you too that, and I don't want to be too long, I do want to close with this if I could, and certainly welcome questions before I have to leave the call, but we recognize what's going on in these last few weeks with respect to racism. We also recognize in these last few days, if we hadn't for many years previous, that harassment, abuse, and bullying is a part of our existence as a population, as much as we try every day to mitigate that, and we must continue to do that. I know that Saskatchewan Hockey has programs and policies in place to try to mitigate these issues, and we will continue to do so. I can tell you that we certainly do have a harassment, abuse, and bullying policy at Hockey Canada that has a zero tolerance to it, and that's important. I will tell you too that we have an equity, diversity, and inclusion task team that over a year ago was identified as being important, and we were working on that, as we were with a general gender expression and identity task team in the fall, to identify with things that we needed to move forward through to be more inclusive, to recognize the social issues of the day, and they've existed for a long time, and we know that. What I think we need to get our heads around is that this is paramount. In our country, we have every ethnicity you can think of, not to mention our First Nations, Indigenous people, who have every right to participate in this great game as anyone else, and any other ethnicity, as I've mentioned. What I want to stress to you is that you can make a mistake once, and be that as it may, but when you make a mistake a second time, that's a choice. And we have to be very, very careful to take the opportunity to seize the moment to not make this mistake again. And I can understand that we probably have already. It's been a long mistake, let's say that. And what we need to do is reacquaint ourselves with what's right in our culture, what's right in being Canadians, what's right in being inclusive, and what's right in giving everyone the opportunity to play this great game and participate in one way or another, be it a volunteer, be it an official, be it a coach, be an administrator. But let's welcome everyone and not ever make the same mistake again. What I think we can do as hockey in Canada is be a leader through this tough time. And that's when leadership emerges at its best. And we can take the lead in admitting what we've maybe made a mistake at, maybe what we've done wrong, been inadequate at. But whatever you do, let's not ever give up the fact that we've tried hard to do the right thing. And we will continue to. And we need every single one of you on this call, new, old, or indifferent, to step up and be a voice to make sure that everyone gets a chance to play. And through this COVID crisis, there's an opportunity that exists to lead in many, many ways. And certainly this is one of them. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'll look forward to hearing from Smitty and look forward to some Q&A before I have to depart the call. But thank you so much for volunteering in this great game. It's absolutely essential, and we couldn't do it without you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Marianne, for the very kind words in the introduction. Folks, as you can tell, Tom Rennie has been able to bring out the best in hockey players as a coach for many, many years, and his track record of success is very well known. And I can tell you in the last 6 years working alongside of him, he has the ability to bring out the best in people off the ice as well. And he's a great person to work alongside. Tom, I couldn't ask for someone better to be working through these challenging times as we, serve the board of directors of Hockey Canada and our 13 members. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in today's AGM. I want to thank Marianne and Kelly for the invitation. And most importantly, want to thank the volunteers and staff of the Saskatchewan Hockey Association for your commitment in normal times, but an extra special thanks for your commitment in these challenging and uncertain times. Tom talked about the dates around the cancellation of the Women's World Championships. I would tell you on that Saturday evening when I went home and I was having dinner with my wife and my son, never once did I think 5.5 days later that the entire hockey season would be shut down. And I definitely didn't appreciate on March the 12th that we would be concluding what I think is week 14. Quite honestly, I'm losing track, but it's 14 or 15 weeks through this process. We've operated on the basis that you can never over-communicate in these times of a crisis. We communicate with our members at least twice a week. We communicate with our board once a week. Tom and I have 2 early morning sessions with our chairman of the board. Our senior staff has a session very similar to this 3 times a week. And we really are operating on the basis that, hey, no one has experience working through this. but the collective experience is, and what everybody brings to the discussion and the ultimate decision is going to make that decision even better. And I can tell you, in my 25 years at Hockey Canada and a few years before that, with New Brunswick Hockey, I've never seen a time where Hockey Canada and its members have been more aligned at trying to make sure they're doing everything they can to ensure the return of hockey, but most importantly, the safe return of hockey for players and those involved in the game across the country. Tom talked a little bit about our efforts coming out of, first and foremost, the first couple of weeks after March the 12th. Yeah, our discussions with our members were really just on how we kind of settled the affairs of our respective organizations and how we managed with the cancellation. There was extensive communication on our front with our business partners, but also our hockey partners like the CHL and the CJHL. In the last 6 weeks or so, probably the last 8 weeks, we've really transitioned our efforts to our return to hockey strategy, our regulatory task team that really is focused on teams that may be vying for provincial and regional and national championships. And I really want to recognize Kelly. He was one of the individuals who was named to that task team. Marianne, appreciate your support and Saskatchewan hockey's support in allowing Kelly to be there. But he was a tremendous contributor to working through a number of twists and turns to allow our regulations to be flexible so we have an ability to return hockey to the ice when it's safe. The health and safety group has spent a tremendous amount of time and really looking at every way and means that we can to providing a safe return to the ice. Ultimately, it all falls to following the directive of your provincial or your relevant health authority. We have a coaching and officiating task team that's looking at alternate delivery of our coaching and officiating clinics in these challenging times because we can't gather like we normally would. And we're also taking advantage of this time to look at the content in those two programs and make it even better and even stronger as we come out of this. We have a number of work groups, one that are working on a number of topics. A real significant one is we're just in the process of advancing on a national research project where we'll speak to leaders of hockey programs at all levels, minor hockey association representatives, families, and really making sure that we understand what the families need for us to ensure their safe return to the ice. Also, what they would be expecting from us when we do return to hockey in its normal form. We've got a marketing and public relations group that really is focused on safety and also just ensuring that there are opportunities to keep the game relevant to families with off-ice activities, in-school hockey curriculum, etc. Really making sure that hockey is top of mind for families across the country. We're looking at the seasonal structure on the basis that hockey might not return in its normal form or league play form as early as possible. We're really looking at opportunities where we can provide a menu of activities that association leaders can use and apply to their situation. We have a number of national and international events that we're looking at. Our fall events we're reviewing right now to determine whether or not we would be able to hold those, given the fact that we would need individual players and staff to travel across provincial borders and in some case international borders. So we're looking at whether or not we can host those at their traditional time or if there's an alternate approach. We also think that this is a time to look at what's going on with private hockey across the country and where there are private hockey programs that are growing or gaining a little bit of stature, really trying to understand that and seeing if there is a better way where we can bring private hockey back into the member structure of Hockey Canada and aligned with our 13 members. On the Hockey Canada front, through the summer months, we're operating our program of excellence camps, male and female, on a virtual basis. Obviously, they won't be able to gather in person and be on the ice, but we think that that opportunity to connect in this type of form will serve us well in the long term. That under 17 player on the men's side or that under 18 girl, we hope that this is just the entry of the program for them, and maybe someday they play for us in the Olympics. And hopefully this point of connection and maintaining relevance with them will help us in the long term. We actually are just in the closing days of a development goaltending camp that we're running with the Western Hockey League and doing that on a virtual basis. So again, trying to stay connected with programs, whether they be high performance or development through the summer months. You may or may not be aware, but we're scheduled to host the World Juniors in December and January in Edmonton and Red Deer. And we continue to plan on a daily basis a number of different scenarios that will allow us to look to host that on behalf of the IHF, but we will only do so provided the Provincial Health Authority gives us the direction. As I close this portion, and then I'd like to say a couple of words on behalf of Tom and I about Marianne and Kelly. As I close this, I would tell you that 100% of our effort is focused on getting players and those around the game back in rinks and on the ice, but we will only do so when the relevant health authority provides the direction that is safe to do so. We want to do our part to ensure that there's minimal or no chance of a second wave. I remind people all the time, I'm a hockey dad, and we want hockey too. We're just like every one of you. We want hockey to be back, but we want to make sure that we can stand very tall with families across the country and say that we're doing so in a safe environment. So we're here to help in any way possible, creating options and flexibility to allow families to enjoy hockey's return as we transition back to normal. I really appreciate the opportunity for Tom and I to say a few words. And if I could, just for a minute, I'd like to say a couple of words with respect to celebrating Kelly's 25 years and also Marianne's last meeting. Kelly, I was thinking about your 25 years, and if my memory's correct, your first meeting at the Hockey Canada level was just after the merger in 1994, and it was in Calgary, and there was a facilitator there by the name of Rick Matashak who had a leadership program. And I remember you and I sitting probably around a table of 8 to 10 people, and when they emptied a bag of Lego in front of us, our eyes caught. I think we both rolled our eyes at the same time, and I knew that I had someone that I would line up to over the years quite well. Folks, I mentioned Kelly's work on the regulations task team. He's done tremendous work over the years. I would tell you that not only is Kelly a great person, he's a great hockey mind. He brings good balance to any discussion. And I would tell you he's a guy that nationally we tap on the shoulder fairly regularly, especially when we've got a challenge that we've got to work through because of his extensive experience. So Kelly, on behalf of Tom and I, on behalf of Hockey Canada, our board and our entire staff, congratulations on 25 years and closing in on 26 years. So congratulations. I also would like to recognize, again, on behalf of Tom and I, Marianne's commitment to Saskatchewan hockey and also her contribution at the national level. Some of you may or may not be aware, but Marianne was the chairperson of our playing rules task team in this last process, which was very extensive of reviewing our playing rules, and managed a large group, a large volume of work, and just did a tremendous job in quarterbacking that on behalf of the 13 members in the Hockey Canada board. Marianne's a great contributor to any discussion at the national level. She's been a great resource on a number of different issues. She's played a role on the CJHL Partnership Committee. I enjoy very much the conversations that I've had with her and Doug over the years at events like the World Juniors. Marianne, I consider you a great friend and very much want to congratulate you on behalf of Hockey Canada from Tom and I on your great years as the leader of Saskatchewan Hockey Association. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna.
Marianne, 1 minute, Marianne. Just while I think it was piggyback on what Scott was saying, and before we go any further, we always like to present the outgoing chair, and when they retire from the board, with a past chair's ring. And so I have one for you. We'll have a plaque, commemorating your 20 years with us. And yes, I did have hair when you started. You certainly had a different hairdo. I'm not going to embarrass you by putting up that original Zone 1 director shot, but Joe and I thought about putting a collage of your pictures over the last 20 years.
Oh, for God's sakes.
We thought better of it. So,
Yes, thank you.
but again, you've been great to me, and we really thank you for all your efforts over the last 20 years.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you. Okay, so said and done, let's get some questions. Tom and Scott, you said you were open to some questions. Okay. Do we have any questions? And you can put your hand up, or if you can't seem to do either that, just start talking and we'll fit you in. I noted that Ron Arishnikov was born in the same town you were. Did you know him?
He was born in Grand Forks. I was born in Cranbrook.
Oh, okay.
The East Kootenay and the West Kootenay. But I remembered Ron. I was an older player, and he was a younger player. I'm I think 3 years older than Ronnie. But I do remember him too when I came through one of my 3 times through Hockey Canada. And
Yeah.
I was really happy to see him involved in hockey, and Saskatchewan hockey especially. And you know, I guess I'd forgotten that Ron had passed away. And when you read that off, I thought, oh, darn, I'd forgotten all about that. And it just goes to show you how we get so consumed by, you know, what we do on a day-to-day basis and our love for the game, because that's what kind of consumes us. But, you know, it's important to make sure that through all of the names that you identified today, Marianne, that we carry on and just honor those people by how we just work in our lives in general, whether it's hockey or work or our families or whatever. Just, we have the luxury of still being here.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's make the best of it. But thanks for identifying Ron even a second time. It's nice to hear about him. Good man.
Yep. You guys, it's your chance to ask Hockey Canada anything you want to.
Marianne, if I could real quick, I certainly don't have all the answers at all, not even close, and Smitty's way better than me, but I would really encourage people to take the opportunity. I've said it before, and you know, times when I've spoken, you don't always get opportunities where people are going to be completely transparent for you, you know, give you the best honest answer that they can. You know, you might like it, you might not. If you don't have an answer, we'll find it. But you know, these are great opportunities. This is hockey, gang, and you know, we're in it together. And like I say, you might not like the answer, you might not even get one, but sure, it's sure worth trying because we're here for you.
Since nobody's talking, Tom, it's Bill Chow here. Just regarding Ron. Ron was the chairperson for the Western Canada Cup in Estevan a few years back, and it was the most successful out of 5 that was being hosted at the time through each of the provinces in Western Canada. So I just thought I'd throw you that tidbit.
That's nice to hear, and I'm not surprised to hear that either, Bill. What I remember is that, you know, Ronnie was a very, very good hockey player. And, you know, and he had an opportunity in the NHL. I think he could have played certainly a lot longer than he did. But what I really appreciated about him was his commitment to development, you know, to come back and give to grassroots development. And you know, a lot of guys that get an opportunity to play in the National Hockey League don't necessarily do that right away, you know, if at all. And I was really impressed by Ron. He actually inspired me, you know, to carry on and pay attention to development and grassroots hockey, even though I had an opportunity to, you know, to play and coach at that level, I should say. I never lost that. And it's people like Ron that help remind me of that for sure. Appreciate that, Bill.
He married a friend of mine, a nurse, so she probably kept him a little humble too.
I would imagine. So now, do they have family still, Marianne? Not to get too personal.
They have a boy and a girl.
Okay.
Boy and a girl.
Tom, this is Vance Heaney from Warman Minor Hockey. And question I have that I don't actually anticipate an answer, but throwing it out anyways, is if there was a second wave sometime this fall, you know, is Hockey Canada, you know, thinking that if it was similar to what just happened, that would be a shutdown again? Or do you think, or are they looking at some type of way to slow down and potentially keep some things going, but in different, you know, done differently? Or has that kind of conversation been brought up yet?
You know, I can't tell you that it's been brought up yet, but I'm sure it's been talked about around a beer or two, around the coffee table or around the kitchen table. But I can tell you, Vance, that the one thing we'll always do always do is pay very close attention to the health authorities' direction. And, that's our guiding light at the end of the day, isn't it? We can think what we want and we can do what we want, or at least think we can. At the end of the day, it's about protecting our population. And I think in Canada, we've done a very, very good job of that. And we need to continue to. And if we have to go back to square one to make sure that the next generation gets an opportunity to play the game, then we'll do that. But the guiding light will always be the public health authority, local, provincial, or federal for that matter. Heaven forbid we go back to anything close to what we've just experienced, and we can kind of continue to inch along so that we can, so the game stands the test of time and we never have to experience this again.
Vance,
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Vance, it's Bill Chow here. Just to, and maybe somebody else has the same information, but the Chief Health Medical Officer, Dr. Sha, has said that if there is a second wave, we are not going to go into lockdown. Now, what that means, I don't know. What minor hockey or Sask hockey would do would be maybe another question, but that's coming out of the Chief Health Medical Officer in Saskatchewan. So just to let you know.
Thanks, Bill.
Can you comment on the surveys that are going to be done from Hockey Canada? Maybe the group would like to hear something about that.
Want me to take that, Tom?
Thanks, Vinny.
Sure. So we're working with a fairly well-established group called Charlton Research, and we will probably launch it. I'm losing track of weeks. I don't know if it's this week or the week after. We will be surveying parents and or guardians, lead administrators amongst our members, hockey coaches, hockey officials, our 13 members, as well as parents of players who are identified as potentially interested in playing hockey, and parents of players who were past registrants of hockey but had not returned. And we're going to go through a process between, I would say, the kind of end of June here now and into July. We'll conduct some research that hopefully will allow us to forecast the participation for the 2021 season and also the 21-22 season. We'll really try to focus in on questions that will allow us to look at how we can grow participation rates targeted at the U7 and the U9. And then this is a general statement, but hopefully it provides some clarity. We really want to define what we need to do better from Hockey Canada and our 13 members to serve the families' needs in the short term coming out of COVID-19, but also is there anything long-term that families are expecting from the leaders of hockey organization across the country. We're trying to set this up for key learnings through this process and ideally coming out of COVID-19, but it also will serve as a benchmark for us and likely will be a research initiative maybe done on a smaller scale on an annual basis that will allow us to compare and see if some of the initiatives that we put into place to try to achieve those growth areas or the serving of the customer better, see if we can track those on an annual basis and make sure that we are making advancements and improvements. So the timeline, I think initially we were hoping May through to July. Obviously, given today's the 20th of June, we're late June and into the month of July. But we've taken a little bit more time working with Charlton Research on defining those questions, just knowing that the better the questions are, the better information that we'll get through this process.
Scott, Vance from Warman again, that those surveys, how are the parents and coaches in some of those people going to be identified, and will us minor hockey associations help contribute to get some of the coaches, parents, officials to you, or is it kind of a random, or how's that going to happen?
You know what, I might lean on Kelly a little bit to help there, but our intention is to work through the 13 members and the Hockey Canada registry that exists in each of the 13 members to identify a sample that would allow us to then talk to those people. Kelly, do you have anything different or anything further there?
Well, just Vance, that Saskatchewan Hockey always has to give permission to Hockey Canada to use the data within the Hockey Canada registry for Saskatchewan. So we've done that. Our board has passed that motion. So then it's a random selection of people from the HCR.
Thanks, Kelly.
And the other news, one of our board members, Keith Junot, is on that task team, I believe. So that's a good thing for us. Any other questions? Ryan, you have a question?
Yes, thanks, Marianne. To Scott or Tom, whoever, sorry, Ryan Henny here with Zone 1. Just, it's a difficult question, but how does Hockey Canada, like the national teams and the Olympic teams, how do they feel about the academy hockeys that are transpiring across the nation in the private hockey? Are they concerned at all about those players and athletes coming out of those institutions and whatnot to the upper levels? Are they trying to promote the minor hockey level or that level? Is that conversation discussed often or not? Does that make sense?
It does. Tom, you want to start?
He's muted, so.
Tom, you might be on mute.
There we go. Go ahead, Scotty. Sorry, everyone.
Okay, no problem.
I'll jump in. I've got a point of view.
Yeah, so, you know, I would tell you that our discussions are more about, you know, bringing those participants through the accredited schools into our system. A number of those accredited schools where players come from are registered within the system. We also have a number of players who come into those national team programs that come from, you know, I would call it the more traditional minor hockey system. Probably the most attention that we have is in a couple of parts of the country. Definitely not in Saskatchewan, but, you know, one of your neighbors has a growing private hockey league. And this past year, there were 2 or 3 players drafted in the Western Hockey League from that private hockey league. So really trying to make sure that we understand why parents are making the decision to go there, and seeing if there's a way that we can, well, first of all, if there's a way we can serve those families inside the more traditional system, as opposed to, you know, players coming outside. You know, our national team programs are focused on identifying the best players available, the best Canadians. And, you know, for years we've had a small number on the male side of, you know, Canadian-born players who play outside of our system in the U.S. You know, there is the odd NCAA player that plays on the national junior team, not a large number. There are larger numbers from our national women's team program at the senior level who have played NCAA hockey. So they're Canadians playing outside the system. Our first and foremost choice would be that every one of those players plays in the Canadian system, but given they're Canadian citizens and our job is to assemble teams of Canadian citizens, you know, we need to be in a position to select the very best to represent Canada on the international stage.
That's real good, Smitty. Thanks. I look at it too from the point of view, again, if I look at grassroots and development, you know, you could consider this competition, I guess, for lack of a better term, but we need to make it healthy competition. And I would say that, as I've said many times in the past, we are in the experience industry, and the minor hockey experience should and needs to be second to none. So with that being said, you know, in as much as coaching certification oftentimes meets with some resistance, especially in this day and age, when you look at these last number of weeks, I don't know that if I'm a youngster or a parent of a youngster that I would want anything less than a certified coach, someone that's really gone through the phases of coaching education, has applied their learnings along the way to make sure that first and foremost we have ethical, value, and principle-driven coaching first and foremost. And so what I guess my challenge is, Ryan, is like, let's push the envelope to be better at the minor hockey level. You know, we don't need to compete with the other entities that could be deemed private hockey. Let's be as good as we possibly can be to deliver an exceptional experience. And by doing that, let's invite our great young leaders in our communities to coach. Let's invite them to be officials. Let's make them want to be a part of our programming because it's that good, you know, and that would be our greatest recruiting tool. And as you can identify with that, you start to see the progression through the various stages of to whatever type of hockey you may want to play beyond that, whether it's, you know, junior or major junior or, you know, female college hockey, whatever the case may be. We just have to make sure the environment is conducive to learning and excelling and experience something incredible. And it's almost too easy to say, oh, well, they've got that, you know, and we'll just, you know, we'll do what we've always been doing. And I'm not sure that works anymore. I had a general manager tell me once in the National Hockey League, Tom, good enough isn't good enough. And it wasn't long after he made that little comment to me that I wasn't working for him anymore. And, you know, I doubt that anyone would lose their job for a lack of effort in minor hockey, but we do have to recognize, you know, excellence. Let's be better at it. Let's use this as an opportunity to be better and just provide a better experience. And, you know, we all have a little bit of philanthropy in us. And you know, you folks have volunteered your time because you love to coach, you love to officiate, you know, you love to be an administrator in the game, and we need more of that. And if we don't do that, two things are going to happen. Private hockey will overtake the demographic, you know, and I'm okay with that, provided they meet the ethical requirements. You know, that's life. That's the way it goes. And number two, we'll forget how to volunteer. If volunteering doesn't bear fruit, you know, by the nature of the kids that we work with, the officials that we grow, the coaches that learn and understand and move on, then we have a bigger problem. And it won't be hockey. It'll be sport, and it won't just be sport. It'll be our citizenship. And in lots of ways, over the last few weeks, we've been given the wake-up call, and no better time for hockey to respond than that right now.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. Do we have time maybe for one more question, if anyone has a question?
I have a question, Marianne.
Okay.
If I could go ahead. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So my question is, I like to hear about that we're doing lots of grassroots and we're doing a lot of development. My biggest challenge that I seem to find when I'm talking to parents and coaching staff is explaining the difference between development and competition, and how we meld the two together, and how we, you know, you commented on healthy competition, but how do we explain to an 8-year-old or an 8-year-old's parents where the development comes in, and how that's so important, and that winning the game, it's that not winning the game sort of at all costs. Any words on that would be appreciated. Thank you.
I would be sure that Scott would have some pretty good insight there. His son's gone through every phase of hockey right now and is on the verge of, you know, pursuing an even greater level of hockey. But I would tell you that's a Hockey Canada member branch, and even more so, and more importantly, a minor hockey association philosophy. And it has to be lived and identified with and modeled every single day. There is a time to be competitive, and you can be competitive with yourself. And it kind of starts there. You know, let's really work hard to excel at our skating skills. Let's really work hard at trying to be a better backward skater, or have better edges, you know, or better puck handling skills, and identify with those and encourage those and acknowledge those. And let's identify with cooperative play, and, you know, and help the children understand what that looks like too. On top of it all, there comes a time. Is it Jean?
Yes.
Yeah, there comes a time, Jean, where the family, you know, have to decide: are we going to play travel hockey, or your AA, single A, triple A hockey, or are we going to stay in the recreation stream? And that the real crime is not giving the child enough of an opportunity through skill development to at least have the choice. And it doesn't mean they have to go anywhere or be anything. They just have to be the best they can be, so that they can make a decision based on their skill set where they can have the most success. It doesn't have to be competitive hockey, quite honestly. It can still be recreation hockey and nothing less than fun. But you can have fun and competitive hockey too. And I think it takes a real strong minor hockey association to educate parents on what competition looks like, you know, and how it really and truly is measured. And quite honestly, it can be measured by the smile on a kid's face too, and not the scoreboard or the statistics or anything like that. And I think that's a strong minor hockey association who, at the end of the day, doesn't just develop a good player or players, they develop a good citizenship. Again, as I've always said, it is a fine line, but I think it's a conversation that every minor hockey association has to have and identify with, and what works for them. I'm not sure there's a one size fits all, but if it doesn't have the element of fun, no competition's worth it.
Thank you.
The only thing I would add is that, you know, I think the real, you know, the real quality and the real challenge for coaches, and the great coaches have the ability to do this at all levels, is they create a little bit of fun competition at the young levels, even though they're not playing games. And through the process of skill development, there's, you know, obviously when young players start to play at 5 and 6, you know, the first measurement is, can they stand up or not? But eventually you get to the point where fundamental skills become part of the kind of the regular routine. And there's creative ways that good coaches across this country find ways to measure that. Hey, 2 weeks ago, it used to take you 7 seconds to go from there to there and around the pylon and back, and now it takes you 5. That's improvement. That's a very basic example, but good coaches have the ability to identify with, you know, measurement and keeping score other than keeping score on the scoreboard. And part of that is, you know, a big part of, you know, making kids feel included, giving them an opportunity to feel a level of success from their improvement. And usually when they go through that process of improving on an annual basis, the percentage of return for hockey the next year is usually pretty strong. And so, you know, good minor hockey coaches, especially at that young level, find a way to create fun games that are a little bit competitive, and players can measure themselves in a good way on improvement, their own improvement, and they measure just against themselves, not against everyone else, because it's about personal improvement. And usually if there's some creative way of doing that, I really do believe in our system that, you know, coaches have a high track record of graduating their players to the next level, and close to 100% of them return the next year.
Thank you.
So what I heard was we really have to make coaches an important part of our game and pay attention to them and feed them and support them. So that's great. Any other thoughts before we let Tom and Scott have their Saturday? Okay, well, I'd like to really thank you, Scott and Tom, for coming. I think it's been a great education for our membership, and we really appreciate taking your time to come and join us, and we will see you sometime. Thank you very much.
Soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Happy Father's Day to the dads and grandpas.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Happy
you.
Father's Day.
Yeah. Okay, while he was talking, I actually scanned to see, and I found a couple more staff members here. We have Trent Say is here, and he looks like he's on a beach somewhere. Or something you look anyway. Trent is the manager of official development. Joel Hausman is also here, and he's the senior coordinator of hockey development, and Lane Stork is on as well. He's also the coordinator of hockey development and works with coaches. So welcome to, I think that's all the staff I caught. I didn't see anyone else. If I did, shout your name out. Okay. So I'm actually was pleased with their attendance, and I always feel inspired after Tom talks, for sure, and Scott. So we're going to go finish up this agenda, and for online voting, do you have a number of total? The potential was 127 votes, but how many votes do we have? Have you guys tallied it, the staff?
Yeah, the total amount of votes is 113. So the majority would be 57, and then when bylaws for 75% would be 85.
85, okay. Okay, so we need those numbers. And how we are going to vote is if you, as Joseph explained to you, the chat procedure is there. So when I call for a vote, you can abstain or put no. If you agree with the motion, then you don't have to do anything. If you disagree or want to abstain from it, then put that in the chat. And only Joseph will see that, but he'll tabulate the numbers really quickly and let me know if the motion is carried. So any questions on that? We'll try it on something easy first. In your package, there was the minutes from the AGM from 2019. And Edward moves, seconded by Sterling, that we accept minutes from the 2019 AGM. Any questions or comments? Okay, if you agree with accepting it, do nothing. If you don't agree, please in the chat put no or abstain, and we'll give you max 15 seconds to do it. We did this with the board and it didn't take that long. So if you want to go ahead and use the chat feature. Do we have a number, Joseph? It's good. The motion is carried. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the chairman's person's report, and that is also in the package, and it's there for you to read. I just want to highlight that from Hockey Canada, it was great that they successfully negotiated renewal for hockey insurance, and they did this in the last weeks of March, I think, as they got bids, and there are levels of insurance, which includes insurance for general liability and accidental accidents and dismemberment, but also includes directors and officers liability. And this is for those people who are administrators to the game. So we were successful at renewing the two levels at the same rate and the other one just a little higher. It also includes an infectious disease component to it. So it was really, yes, we got that insurance. So that insurance is in place for the upcoming year. We talked a little about mental health for participants, and there's a desire both at Hockey Canada level and the branch level to look at some initiatives for that. And if you look at our website, the staff did a really good inclusion of mental health resources there, and the goal is to assist minor hockey associations. And just on a personal note, every year on this board, when we read the roll call, there has been someone who has died from suicide. And I was hoping maybe this year it wouldn't happen, but there were 2 people on the list that passed away from suicide. So I think that we do have to pay attention to and do what we can do. Also, Hockey Canada has provided a resource guideline on refunding, and some of the MHAs have refunding policies, and this is in case you need to, something happens next season that people pay their fees and all of a sudden they're not playing. And anyway, this just gives guidance to it. So if you need that information just as a guideline, you can contact the staff and they can direct you to that. We talked a little about racism, and I think that Tim Ubik has looked after suspensions for a few years, and we had a board discussion on that too. There's sometimes there's difficulty in figuring out what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate, and what should we do about it. So it's important to keep talking about this. Hockey Weekend in Hillmont was outstanding success. They had a record-breaking profit this year of over $200,000, so that's great. I think Radville is going to Radville next year, and the group's already started to plan for that. Some initiatives that I think that you need to think about participating in. For one thing for sure is the podcasts that are on, and Jake Murray, who's part of this Zoom call, does interviews with people. The last one was catching up with Emily Clark, and you can look forward to more of those in the upcoming year. They're very good, and I congratulate the staff there for doing that. There's been some development webinars as well. that are, there's currently, as of when I did the report, there were 4 on the website. So that they're also good to see. Staff also are working on virtual development sessions for coaches. And so the staff have been working hard to continue to commit to serve the hockey community however they can. Working with officials, you know, the referees division has had this goal to put the best possible official on the ice for every game. So they do classroom instruction on and off the ice, coaching throughout the season, and they do well, very well. We can see it in the assignments that our officials get to national and international events, and this is both for male and female officials. And it's unfortunate that some were assigned to events and the events were canceled, but I'm confident that same officials will be given the same opportunities next year or the year after, whenever they can. So the Governance Committee of SHA, we formed a subcommittee to look at the governance of the officials division. And we have met a few times over the season, and we're proposing changes to the governance that will be reflective in changes that are in the bylaws. And the direction for change is led by the philosophy that officials should be able to work at those things they are most interested in and best at. For instance, if an official excels at instruction, then they should be able to focus their time on this. The recommendation was supported by the board of directors, and it is to create an official development program with a leadership group that oversees things. So there's then teams on instruction, coaching, discipline, and providing officials for development to teams, such as senior teams, under 18, under 15. And the officials also wanted to strengthen the link between leagues and MHAs as well. So I think Trevor's done a lot of leading on this, as has Trent and some of the Kim and Lyle Wilhelm as well. I think it's going to be a great change, and they are going to continue to have their goal. Our hopes, of course, collectively, is that we get back to playing hockey. So be familiar with the guidelines we have to follow. And I put in there some teams from Hockey Canada, and we've had some staff and board members be named on as reps for that. It may look different, it may be different, but working together, I think creativity gives you a chance to providing a way back to play hockey. I want to thank my fellow board members for all their work. We have excellent representation from across the province. Thank you also to the staff of SHA under the leadership of Kelly. Our staff do good work, and I've said this before, good work done over and over again becomes great work. We appreciate also the volunteers from the membership that assist with the programs, participating in news, spreading the messages of SHA, shaping character for life. It is more than a game. This is my final message to the membership, and it's been my privilege serving you these past years. It's been 20 years I've been on this board. I know hockey is in good hands and will continue to play an important role in the lives of many. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this game. And saying that, if you have any questions, I'll first get Tim and Sarah to move my report. So are there any questions? Okay, we'll vote on the motion. If you want to say no or abstain, please put so in the chat. There's Joe. How are we doing, Joe? Okay, the motion is carried. Now I'm going to turn over the microphone to Kelly, and he has a report and an auditor's finance stuff. Okay.
Thanks, Marianne. So I hope everybody has taken a chance to see the executive summary I've put together along with the auditor report for 2019-20 that we circulated last week and would be within the document that Joseph circulated to you upon registration. I don't intend on taking a lot of time, but just briefly go through a few things. If you have it close by, that's fine. If not, you can just listen along. But I just refer you, first of all, to page 1, which is the statement of financial position of the SHA. And under assets, under cash, we have an increase of cash of 105,000 from last year, and those details are on page 4 of the audited statement. You can review that if you like. Our receivables are much lower this year with the season being shut down on May 12th. It gave us a lot more opportunity to receive a lot more information or funding that was owed to us and coming in than the previous year. Our inventories are higher simply because we do buy and sell a fair amount of clothing at the SAS First events that were unable to be held in April. So they still remain in inventory, as well as things like jerseys and socks that had been purchased for female futures, our SAS First female and midget events, those type of things that we had planned. Prepaid expenses are higher because we don't get refunds on our SAS First events for ice, but we do get credit. And so we'll be able to use that hopefully in the upcoming year on the events that we have. And then that money will be allocated to expenses in the 2021 season. Investments are note 3. There you could see a slight increase, but overall, like most of our pension plans and our stocks and our investment accounts, we had earned close to $40,000 in interest that had already been deposited to Saskatchewan Hockey, but our book value on our investments went down about $130,000 as of April 3rd. So you'll see under other revenue, I believe it's on page, on under revenue, you'll see investments and interest account being on page 14, a $91,000 loss in there, and that's not cash, but it's more from the perspective of the book value. And as of today, we certainly earned that has come back a significant amount. Our property, plant, and equipment, which is note 4, that really talks about where we are from our building. For some people who are on the call, may not know that we do own the building that we're in. It's a 10,000 square foot building we bought 21 years ago. We lease some space to Saskatchewan High School Athletics, so we bring in some rent. But our building, on our book value, if you see in that note, is maybe around 150,000. But as I reported to our board today, I had a real estate fellow come by on Wednesday actually and said our building's worth in the neighborhood of $1.5 million. So it's been a good investment that we made 21 years ago. On liabilities and net assets, certainly our accounts payable are a lot lower because of having 6-week period to get things taken care of and not worrying about invoices coming in late because of our SAS First events. Our deferred revenue is higher because of a grant from Hockey Canada. They have various pillars within their organization, and there's interest earned on some of the pillars that are distributed to each of the provinces to help with our operations. And when you take a look at page 2 on our statement of operations, you'll see that we experienced a surplus of 191,000, and 41.6 of that is just interest earned on various internally restricted assets that we have, which are scholarship funds, etc., that we have invested with the National Sport Trust Fund, where in many cases we get a guaranteed 5% return. And so that interest was over and above payments made on scholarships in the past year. But if you take a look in the last 2 years on the line just above them, so 149,469 for this year, 223,750 for last year, really represents the surplus in operations. And I want to direct you to under revenue, where you see National Sports Division Body. That is money that we receive from Hockey Canada, and we have to show it there as revenue. But without that money, we're pretty well on a break-even basis on operations, or is there to assist us if we do experience a shortfall in operations. And that money comes from about 4 different sources. There is a fund at Hockey Canada from 25 years ago when Hockey Canada was self-funded from an insurance perspective. They couldn't find anybody that would insure Hockey Canada. And Saskatchewan Hockey at that time contributed 10% of what was the total amount of money that was in that account. And so the money was invested in a trust for future potential payouts on liability claims. And so we normally now receive 10% of the interest earned on that account, which in some years has been as high as $60,000. This year it was $37,000. We also receive the branch pillar support interest for us that is shared between the 13 branches of Hockey Canada. That's a little lower this year than what we normally received, and that's sometimes in that $55,000 to $65,000 range. But Hockey Canada is currently undertaking a project to redo Hockey Canada registry. So there'll be an HCR 3.0 hopefully out for the 21-22 season. And so some of the money from that fund has been diverted to that project. We also receive portions of surpluses earned on the World Women's Championship and World Junior Championships held in our country. So especially in times where they've been very successful, like the last time they were in Alberta, where there was a close to $20 million profit made, Saskatchewan Hockey would receive somewhere around $50,000 for that. So really our surpluses are built on the backs of those grants from Hockey Canada, and because of that, the money that we have set aside in investments, etc., are really from those sources. Going on the liabilities there as well, the internally restricted, I've noted that's the amount of money invested in things like the SHA Scholarship Fund, our Saskatchewan Development Model Scholarship Fund. They help to fund approximately $45,000 to $51,000 scholarships that we give away annually. And I think it's really good that we're assisting members with their post-secondary education. And then there's the unrestricted net assets, which is around $2.3 million, which is our cash and et cetera that we have. So I'm not going to get into a lot of details. We've altered our schedules a little bit within our audit to be more clear on terms of where funding is and expenses are. You can certainly see that, compared to what our budget was for 2020, we're certainly down in revenue, and we're certainly down in expenses. And that's clearly from the last 6 weeks of not having SAS First Female tournament, under 16, under 18, our SAS First Midget tournament. We were unable to have our HP1 coaching. We didn't have our SAS Female Futures program, where there was also another jamboree, a female jamboree we were to have. So there was a number of large revenue expense items, more on the expense side, that weren't able to be held. So you can see, what our budget was, and then what our final April 30th total is. So I'm not going to go into all those details. Hopefully you have, or you can certainly can. And if you have any questions now, please feel free to ask them, and if you feel uncomfortable now, feel free to email me at any time in the future, and I'll be happy to explain anything.
Anybody have any questions of Kelly? I see L Hubs has joined. L Hubs from Indian Head is a board member on the Hockey Canada as a board of director, and he's a life member for the Saskatchewan Hockey Association. So welcome, Al.
Thanks, Marianne.
Al remembers how many earrings Kelly had when he first started, I'm sure.
2.
Okay. Okay, if there's no question about the auditor report, Greg Holbrook, and Aaron Dimitrico. Will you motion acceptance of the auditor's report? Okay, no questions. We will now vote. So if you approve, don't do anything. If you want to express your opinion as with a no, please do so now. Or if you want to abstain, please do so. The motion is carried. Thanks, Joseph. Okay, now the board is recommending that we approve the auditor, and it's the same auditor we've had for many years, KMPG, as an auditor. Holly Petit and Jean Gilchrist make that motion to approve KMPG as the auditors for the SHA. Any questions? Okay, please, if you approve, do nothing. If you disapprove or want to abstain, please put so in the chat. The motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, now we have bylaws, and each bylaw must be dealt with individually. And that they were in your package, and a lot of them are housekeeping, but we will go through this. And the motions are all made by Len and Tim to move the passing approval of the bylaw. So I will go through them, and just be ready if you have one you want to speak to, please do so. If you need to interrupt me, do that too. So the motion we'll start with is 2.01.01, and this is about membership, and it is simply to make it clearer and to change our referee division executive to the officiating development committee. So that's the body that represents officials in the province. So if you approve that motion, do nothing. If you disapprove, please do so now. And these are bylaws, so we need 85 people to approve. Carried. Are we carried, Joseph? Okay, this is carried. Okay, bylaw 2.01.02, and this is members' rights. And it's just to simplify wording. I think it's housekeeping, to be honest with you. It's put may exercise autonomy by way of interpreting, and it's the correct spelling of bylaws. And so this is kind of housekeeping, but I will give you an opportunity to vote now. If you approve, do nothing. If you disapprove or want to abstain, please do so. Okay, we've got Joseph, you see any? It's carried. Okay, bylaw 2.01.031 and member obligations. And again, this is housekeeping. They changed the word duties to responsibilities, also correct spelling of the word bylaw. So if you agree, do nothing. If you don't, please put so in the chat. Okay, it's carried. Bylaw 2.01.04 on associate membership, and we're following Hockey Canada's move to not say associate memberships and to use the word partners. So we're changing that wording there. And if you agree, do nothing. If you disagree or want to abstain, please do so. Okay, we're good.
Marianne, just to go back, I think it's 201.034 is also, I think, we missed.
$201. I
You
just did
mentioned
in the order.
20301 Roman
four.
numeral 1,
Okay,
and then
you're
there's
right.
Roman numeral 4.
And it's to change the word, yes, I thought it was one page. It's to change the word duties to responsibilities. So this is 2.01.034. Okay, we'll vote on that one. Any, if you agree to change that wording, do nothing. Okay, that's 10. We're good, that's carried. Sorry, Kelly. Okay, now did we get a vote on 2.01.04, which is the partners? Did we do that one? That's to change the word associate membership to partnership. So if you don't agree with it, put something in now. Okay, anything? It's carried. Okay. Okay, 2.01.06, and this is ceasing to be a member. And this is housekeeping to change some words. So it doesn't change the intent, but to use the word partner. So if you agree with those housekeeping changes, do nothing. If you disagree, do something in the chat. Put no in the chat. And this is carried. Okay. 2.01.07, and these are dues. And this is actually associate members change to partner and simplify the wording a little bit, little small changes. So if you agree, do nothing. If you disagree, please put that in the chat. It's carried. Okay. 2.02.012, and this is the order of business at the annual meeting. And like today, we had acknowledgments, and we've done that for a while now to include acknowledgments. Sometimes we can do it in present. So this is just to include the fact that we have acknowledgments. So if you agree, do nothing. If you disagree, please put no, or if you want to abstain in the chat. Carried. So that one is carried. 2.02.02, and this is about special meetings, and it's been in the books for a while, but when we looked at it, it wasn't clear about how many members you need to actually have a call for a special meeting. It had a percentage, so we now put there's 30 members you need, and it shall convene it within 60 days. That gives you enough time to call a special meeting. It simplifies it. So if you agree with the change, do nothing. If you don't agree or abstain, please do so in the chat. Okay, that is carried. 2.02.03, and this is just allows for notifying members electronically. It's basically reality. So if you agree, do nothing. If you want to abstain or don't agree, please put so in the chat. And I'm going to assume that's carried. Carried. Okay, 2.02.04, and this is on voting. And it Again, simplifies it. It also uses the word officiating development leadership team members, members in good standing, who gets to vote. So it doesn't change the intent, either simplifies the wording. So if you agree with that, please do nothing. If you do not, put so in the chat. We will get through this, guys. That is carried. 2.03.01 A and B. And this is motions okay, to change the bylaws to allow for changes in the bylaw annually. We used to do regulation changes one year and bylaw changes the next, and now regulations are handled through the board of directors. So we felt that if we wanted to be nimble, we could make changes to the bylaws every year. So this was recommended by the board. So if you agree with being able to do that, and then maybe we won't have all of these at the same time. If you agree, do nothing. If you disagree, please indicate so in the chat. Are we doing, is this carried, Joseph? Yes, it's carried. Sorry, that's my dog. I don't know why he's barking. 2.04.01 F, and this is new. And to a sentence that stood on its own, it's renumbered rather than having it stand on its own. It's considered F, so it's housekeeping. It doesn't change anything. So if you agree just with the shifting of that wording, proposed wording, please do nothing. If you disagree, do so in the chat. Okay, that's carried. Okay, the next one is 2.04.02, and this talks about meetings of the board. It includes the officers' meetings, the officers group, which we have and do meet. They meet monthly during the season and any other time they need to. And it also, there is a code of conduct committee that we have established as a board committee. So we included the code of conduct committee. And this is if at times retained to remove any director or officer after review. So the board is recommending that we do that. If you approve it, do nothing. If you want to say no or abstain, please do so in the chat. Okay, that's carried. The next one is 2.04.03, and in the current wording, our board is comprised of 7 officers, 16 zone directors, and a referee in chief. Pardon me? Oh. Brad, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to wait till you finish going through that. I'd just like to speak to this.
Okay. And so the board of directors shall consist of the following 7 officers and 16 zone directors. So one of the officers would serve as the chair of the officiating development committee. So that was recommended by the board. Do you have questions? Go ahead, Brad.
Just on this, I'm a little concerned with this moving forward. Over my 25 years on the board with the referees division, we've always had outstanding communication, with the exception about 3 or 4 years where things really broke down to a lack of communication, and we got that back on track actually when Al came on board. But with regards to this, I understand we'll have a staff person on that will have constant communication, but overall, I know in talking with Bill Chow on the SJHL, he felt that once they left the board in a voting capacity, there was just maybe not the communication that took place. he told me that he understands that he didn't need to vote on many of the issues, and I think as a referees division, we're in the exact same boat. But I think if we could somehow have a person involved, very similar to what the SJHL does with a non-voting member to communicate the message, I think that would be good. I also work with Canada West University. I know the men's hockey coaches. They have an athletic director that's on their board or on their, so we have our meetings with the coaches, but the coaches do not get any communication directly to the ADs in that hockey. And I see this as a very similar structure now. And I know talking to many of the coaches in that league, they feel a disconnect that their voice isn't always heard through the AD that comes and delivers the message back. And I think this might be the same. I understand right now with Trevor being a board member, that's a great connection, but the day is going to come when Trevor's not on the board. And I think this might lend itself to a disconnect. So I don't know if it's can be in place, but I would almost like to propose that we have a similar situation to the SJHL, that we're a non-voting member, but we would be part of, or if so be able to attend meetings similar to that. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
And who would that be, Brad?
That's something we're going to have to work out. Maybe it'd be the head of, or maybe the committees would pick one person to represent them. Like we have a chair on each one of the committees now. I really feel the new structure in place excellent. Like I think it's going to get much better work done overall, and I commend all the people that were involved in that. But maybe it's one of the chairs is chosen from within that group to be the person that delivers the message on behalf of all the committees on the referees. And again, I don't see it as an important part to be a voting member, but I do think at times we need someone in that room to maybe further emphasize some of the issues that the officials are dealing with. So it's a good question, Marianne, but I think that would be the only way we could maybe get around it, is that leadership team pick a representative themselves to attend those.
Yeah, I think it is my understanding that the chair of the leadership group would be a board member. Is that right?
Right, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's someone with officiating background or that sort of thing. And I mean, right now it can very well happen, because I know many people on the board do have some officiating background, so that's great, but that's not always going to be the case. And again, I just think
so like a fail safe to make sure that there is always an official. Right. Okay.
And again, I'm not asking, or I don't feel it, they need to be a voting member, but I just think at times they need to be in the room to present. And again, the two situations I've seen very, and Bill, I don't know if Bill's still on the call, but Bill and I have talked about it, how he sees it's very valuable to be back as part of this. And again, with my Canada West involvement, I know those coaches would love to at least be in the room with the athletic directors when things are being discussed, rather than their representative from the athletic director board representing them. So I feel we'd be in a very similar situation to that. Anyway, that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to this?
Marianne, I am still on the call, and just to Brad's point, I mean, obviously I stepped away from the SHA board whatever number of years ago, and part of that was because of, I was voting on SHA business, minor hockey business, that I just didn't think I should be coming from junior hockey. Likewise, it would be like Kelly and Derek were, attended our AGM here a couple of weeks ago, and it would be like them attending our meeting and having a vote on junior hockey business. So, but then also the disconnect like Brad spoke of was in fact true, where, just some of the discussions that took place, and obviously when we're in a room together, it's a lot different than being on a Zoom call. But I just think for me, that disconnect didn't do junior hockey any good from being disconnected from the board. So, you know, asking and being allowed to be part of the SHA board and being a non-voting member, I think is important for junior hockey in the SJHL in Saskatchewan. So that's just my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity to touch base on a couple of things that Brad shared. Thanks very much for sharing those concerns. But I agree with a lot of things you mentioned as far as the disconnect, whether it be perceived or real. That's not a good thing, especially in this overall effort with the governance that we, the officials undertook in the review, I guess, and where we got to is taking away the division, and that's, you know, a division. So removing that. And the one part I disagree with you, with all respect, of course, is I do think they should be voting on all SHA matters. I think with the officer chairing that committee, that development team, the representation now goes from what's traditionally been held by the referee in chief. And this isn't a personal, it's a title. And that person has attended three to four board meetings annually. So I think that is a limited engagement compared to an officer that is charged with that portfolio, and the liaison between the leadership team of the new officials development committee and their structure is awesome. It allows itself to make a very healthy contribution. And I think with the officer on there, the officials are now represented constantly, monthly officer meetings, all board meetings, and an opportunity to be in on daily business between board meetings, I guess. So I think it's important once they're in, and there's no more hockey side, official side. So I think we're one, is the way I see it. And I know from my knowledge of how the governance review has progressed that that's desired. We happen to be in a very fortunate situation with a known entity in Mr. Norum. And hopefully it works out that he gets assigned the portfolio and will work making sure that the representation is there today and build the development leadership committee in such a way that there's a number of potential representatives through the board to the officers group. That's all, really. So I think I view it as a very healthy, heightened engagement. And one other comment is I don't think we need the most, personally, I don't feel that it has to be the most knowledgeable, experienced on-ice official involved with that. I think as a chair, the number one thing is facilitating efforts and the volunteers that are involved. It's certainly facilitating meetings and coordinating and making sure that the representation is two ways. If the overall SHA membership has a concern that goes down to officials or sideways to officials, that is a conduit, and vice versa. If the officials have concerns or improvements, enhancements, either way, that's a conduit. So that's the primary objective of any chair, and being an officer, that lends itself well in my view.
Thank you, Tim. Trevor, did you have your light on to speak?
Yes, Marianne, thank you. I was not going to speak to this bylaw. We discussed it at an April board meeting, and I was fine with that moving forward. I think it's always a little bit of concern with the unknown, and my role moving from the referee in chief to an officer of the SHA board. And I guess, again, it's a little bit unknown and uncertainty for me on how that role or how my role changes at the officer level. And I'm very comfortable for the next 2 years in the officer position, but I think maybe if we all keep this in the back of our heads and look at it, I believe our governance, we can change it annually if we need to, and we're in a very, very, very good position moving forward with the change to the officiating development program. And I think we have I think we have some time to test drive this and make sure it's the best possible structure. So I would support the board's motion, but I completely understand Brad. Brad and I have had several discussions, as many on the officiating leadership group. We've talked about it at length.
Yeah.
Just, am I mute here?
No, Brad, do you want to?
Just again I know from the executive, people have talked to myself and others that it is change and they're very much concerned about it. That we have kind of been an arm's length board for many, many years. And again, they just want to make sure. And again, everyone feels very comfortable with the structure right now because Trevor's there. But again, I just think, I don't believe it would hurt at all just having a similar situation to the SJHL. And anyway, that's my thoughts, and I'll move forward.
Okay, anybody else want to speak to this motion?
Just myself, Marianne. Brad, I understand where you're coming from, but a lot of your members had the same concerns 10 to 12 years ago when we moved the operations of officiating into the office, and that's probably been one of the best moves that we made. So I don't believe that anybody who serves on the board or anybody that is here today representing somebody doesn't have officiating as the core of one of the things that are the basics of operating hockey. And so for me, there's people that are on our board now that will eventually move into officers' positions that are officials, care about officiating. And if you're not on the board and you don't care about officiating, you probably should think about why you're on the board. But so I really think that officiating will always have an emphasis, and we probably have a bigger emphasis in this province than any other branch in terms of commitment to officiating. So I'm pretty confident that officials are going to be taken care of. They'll be represented on our board. And as Tim said, there's actually more representation other than just 4 board meetings. They're now at, someone chairing that committee who's at every officers meeting as well.
And I would agree with you, Kelly, on we have, in my mind, I get an opportunity to work with Hockey Canada. We have one of the best relationships, without a doubt, in Canada between our board and our officials. I just don't want anything to go away with that. I think the new structure in place is very beneficial to get more focused work in all the areas. I just want to make sure that that communication between the board and the officials, not even the official, never breaks down to what I see in other branches.
I think, Brad, if the chair of the officer who chairs the committee does their job, the referees will have more influence than they do, as long as that occurs, because there will be many more opportunities. And if it's not felt that way and someone's not doing their job, then people do need to speak up.
And just history again, when it did break down for those 3 to 5 years, the board member from the SHA, in my mind, really broke the communication down between officials and the board, and that's where everything fell apart. So I've seen that in history. So anyway,
you don't want to go back there.
I'll mute myself and we can move forward.
Okay. I'm going to call for a vote on this. So if you agree, do nothing. If you disagree, please vote in the chat. Or if you want to abstain, please do so in the chat. Okay, I've given it 25 seconds, Jake or Joseph. It's carried. Okay. bylaw 2.04.04, and this speaks to elections. We have to be an officer, you must be on the current board, and it just outlines the criteria for becoming an officer. It also talks about elections for a chair. And I think it's good. The election will take place of the chair at the April meeting. Then if there is a new chair, they can go to the Hockey Canada meeting, be introduced. It just allows for a better transition, I think. It also talks about the portfolios that the officers will look after. So any questions or comments on that? I think that was approved by the board. So we'll go for a call for a vote. Carried. Thank you. Okay, 2.04.05. This is about, I think it's actually about accountability, to clarify the responsibilities for zone directors, what expectations are, and a little bit about the elections as well. This was recommended by the board, so I'll call for a vote. If you approve, do nothing. If you disapprove, please put so in the chat. Just about done. Joseph, how are we doing? We're good. That's carried. 2.04.06. And this, in fact, is the new governance model being implemented. There's a official development committee who oversees the official development in the province. So this eliminates the referee-in-chief position. So, and again, this is related to the previous motion, bylaw motion. So I'll call for a vote. If you agree, do nothing. If you disagree, please do so. A few more seconds. Joseph, how are we doing? It's carried. Okay. 2.04.07, and this eliminates the past chair. Felt that it wasn't necessary. Makes me redundant. So if you agree, put do nothing. If you disagree, please put so in the chat. The board supports this motion. How are we doing, Joseph? It's carried. Okay. And the last one, I believe this is the last one, 2.04.08. It's the duties of the chairperson of the board. And it just outlines it better. And it also it has the responsibility of reviewing appeal applications. So it clarifies some wording. This was also recommended by the board. If you agree, please do so. Please do nothing. If you don't agree, do so in the chat. You got it, Jake? Or Joseph? I don't know why I call you Jake. Okay, sorry, it's approved. He's probably helping you, right? Count. Okay, thank you. So those are all the bylaws, and I know that took a while, but I appreciate it. We'll now open it up for some questions and answers, or maybe more questions, who knows? Anybody want to, I'll open it to the floor for anybody. Did you guys enjoy the talk from Tom, and was that worth doing? Any comments on that? Okay, I don't see anything. Jake, do you have anything in the chat? Okay, then you know what? I'm going to ask Chad Holinati and Trevor Norm, the new officers, to adjourn our meeting. All in favor? Do nothing. Okay, this meeting is adjourned, and Tim, you are now the chair of the SHA. I will turn everything over to you, and everybody who's not on the board or doesn't have to stay can leave the meeting. I hope everyone has a safe and healthy summer. Thank you.